Hi, welcome back to Stock Talk. This is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. So in today's lesson, I'm going to keep it brief, but I do want to talk about something I think that's pretty important. It has to do with RSI. One specific RSI setup that I look for, especially when the market's been trending. We don't really have that in position right now. You can find it on daily and hourly charts, not necessarily on weekly, which is my favorite time frame to find this pattern. But I want to go through it just so you're aware and ready for it. So let's go ahead and get into this agenda. So I use the RSI 5 to really help with the timing of this type of a pattern. Really, I use RSI 5 for timing in general. Even when I'm looking at ADX and MACD, I like it as an additional tool for timing. Now, there are times where we can get an extreme reading. And if that takes place in a trending environment, a strong trend, either up or down, I'm going to show you a positive version, a bullish version. But if we have condition in place where we have a strong trend and we get an extreme reading, we want to take advantage of that. So that's really what I'm going to try and cover in today's lesson. And then we're going to go through the symbol requests that came through. So let's go ahead and get into this lesson now. Okay, so I've got a daily chart of BLDR up right now. And if you've not watched anything that I've done a couple of lessons. Actually, I did one about a month ago on RSI. So if you haven't seen that, it's probably worth going back through that and watching that lesson. I use the RSI in two different ways. I've got an RSI 20 and an RSI 5. The RSI 5 is used for overbought, oversold and timing, and the RSI 20 helps my it basically helps confirm what I'm seeing on an ADX and a MACD basis. It has a little bit simpler way of looking at it, because if the RSI, the red line here, if that's staying above the 50 level, then we know we have a trending situation in place, right? Whereas if you go back through here, we essentially were waving back and forth above and below the line. We never really had any real trend in place, and you can see that here. And then that started to shift right about here, where the line was tested and held. It was tested and held, and then we just continued to hold it throughout this period. So just want to keep that in mind. Now, I think you can use the RSI 5 in conjunction with the ADX and the MACD the way that I use them. You don't have to use the RSI 20, but sometimes it's nice just to have it all on one screen like this. The other thing that I would recommend in the approach that I'm going to talk about today, which is a little bit more refined than what I've discussed in the past, is I like to look at relative strength for this, all right? Because what we're looking for is an extreme oversold reading where we get down to the 30 level in the RSI 5. When you're in an uptrend in a stock or a market, you usually don't get to the oversold down to 30 or lower. All right, just if you're trending, you're going to only expect it to get back to neutral. And that goes for most oscillators that you'd be looking at. Don't be looking for signals down under 30 a whole lot. Now, what I've noticed is if you get an interim decline in the market where the market decides to sell off for a bit, you can go look at the stocks that are showing the strongest relative strength and look for the ones that get that RSI down under like this. Now, it's always nice to have this confirmation with the RSI 20 holding above 50. Then we know we can be a little bit more aggressive on an upturn. The other thing I really like to look for is I want to make sure that 18 isn't rolling over in any significant degree. If it's really turned over like that during the pullback, then I know that this signal is probably not as timely, or it's going to take more time to get going. But if you notice in these, once the trend really got going, just notice when I said where this held the 20 level on a pivot here, we pivoted down, turned up, and then came back here. And we basically had started a trend. If you look at it from a trending standpoint, we had the 1 was the trend line break, 2 was the test, and then 3 came here, came back and tested, and then this here is the confirmation of a new uptrend. Hope everyone can see that. If you don't, I mean, the course I go through this in depth, but if you don't understand this, you got to realize you do need a couple of higher highs and a couple of higher lows after the trend line break to really have confirmation of a new trend. Well, here's the confirmation of the new trend. This is the first pullback. Now, the relative strength line is showing nice strength, and we get an oversold reading. So I really like that. So you can use that early on in a trend when you get this opportunity and know that this is probably a launching pad for the move. The other way you can use it is after it has made a move to the upside, you still have a rising 18 and you get this deep oversold reading with this above, then you can use it as a swing trading tool, right? A nice quick swing trading tool, and a lot of times it will exceed the prior high, but you're just looking for a single leg. That's after it's been a little bit more mature. Now, this signal here does qualify based on everything I've told you so far. There's really still have good relative performance. You're still above the 20 level. The only thing is we have a little bit of a divergence in the RSI 20 off the top. This went to a higher high. This basically made a double top. So I would be a little bit more leery about taking this, but you could do it again for just a test of that high. Now, I want to show you my favorite way to do this. I'm going to switch over now. I've got the weekly chart of NVIDIA up. Now, this actually happened. I remember this crystal clear, one of the better trades opportunities that I've had in a long time in a trending situation. So market is getting killed in 2020. This is early part of 2020, right? Market's is selling off. Well, this stock is no exception. It's dropping too. Post-split, it went from 80 to under 50. I mean, that's a pretty sizable price drop, but look at what the relative strength was doing. I mean, this was holding up like a champ. So I know that we still have a rising 18 here. So I know that this is essentially being pulled down by the market because I can see that here. Look at what this did. Got deeply oversold. We're still hanging around the 50 level here. And the 18 and the 40 basically had pulled back. We were pulling back. This is the 18-month line. There were just a lot of reasons why this was like a rubber band being pulled down. And then the moment you let go, it was going to snap back to the upside. Be on the lookout for this. We don't really have this situation in place right now because the market isn't trending. You will find this trade that I'm talking about more on a daily or an hourly right now, not necessarily on the weekly, but I want you to be prepared because once we get a trend going, you can find this in either direction to the upside or the downside. I love it going to the upside when the market goes through a deep, quick, like flush correction, and a good strong stock going into that on a relative basis holds its ground. You can really take advantage of these and be aggressive. Go down to the smaller time frame and look for an early entry. So that's the way I would go about using this. It's a great tool for times when the market is selling off. Look for those relative strength stocks and then use the RSI to really help you with the timing. All right, let's move on to the individual symbols. Just briefly, my services can be found at rabilstockresearch.com. The individual package has about 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a special video for that package, and you'd automatically be enrolled into the Trend and Momentum trading course. So if you're interested, go ahead and take a look. Okay, so I'm going to start out with the QQQ. I got a question about the tech index, global tech index, IXN. So I wanted to start with this, then I'll go to that. And then we'll get into the symbols. I actually do want to do the Russell 2000 real quick as well. So I'm going to cover a couple indexes first. So when we look at this QQQ pattern, you know, I mean, the signs of improvement are pretty clear, right? We've got this 18-week line that was declining, and it was tested successfully, and we've turned up from that. We've got some signs of MACD improving. I actually like the momentum on the daily chart more than the weekly chart. It's really not doing a whole lot from an ADX standpoint, but we've gotten decent confirmation here. So I think this is interesting from that standpoint. Now, I wanted to show you something. This is a different look. This is the same four time frames, but just the 18 MA overlaid. And when we look at it in this fashion, you can see that, yeah, we've got this going up, but we're rallying into this one, which is going down. So I don't want to get too excited at this point. I recognize the fact that we've made a move to the upside, had a nice little bull flag, and now we might be forming another little bull flag. We could push a little bit higher. But if we don't get a real extreme sign of new momentum that can really clear this line, you still have to kind of expect this to be a difficult environment. So I liked this setup down here, this pullback to the rising 18-week as a trading play. And we've gotten a nice trade. We had a trend line break here. Let's go back to the other time frame. So one that includes the momentum. So we had this nice signal, zero line reversal where we didn't cross below the zero line, and we had low ADX showing no real selling strength. It's a nice trade. I don't know that this is actually going to break out and continue to the upside. Now, if it can hold here, make a pivot low at the 18 or higher, then I'd start to feel a little bit better about its chances of actually maybe making a little bit more of a longer move to the upside. Let's look at the IXN though. So this was one of the ones that was asked. So if we look at this, very similar to what's going on in the QQQ, the relative performance line, very similar, same kind of pattern. We're showing a lot of strength. This is definitely where the leadership is right now. And this one has actually cleared that 18. Also notice how the MACD, which was way overdone here, stretched away at the beginning of 2022 on the monthly chart, worked all the way back down to the zero line and is finding support there. So again, same pattern here. I'd still view it as a trading play because when this crossed, this line was still declining. It's probably going to take a little work to really turn this into a trend to the upside, but I would say that this is a little bit stronger. Same thing goes here. Can we hold this area right at this level, which is 52.5? Right around 52.5. If we can hold 52.5 and turn up from here, then I'd start to feel pretty good about the fact that we might push up into the next resistance level and actually see it could be a little bit more dynamic than what we've been seeing. The problem is the pullback that's taking place in a lot of the individual stocks I noticed this week has been pretty harsh. So I'm not looking to get overly excited about this. I want to see confirmation on a reversal, and that's going to show up on the hourly time frame, which right now is showing overrun on the zero line. So I'm actually thinking that if this is going to turn, it's going to take a little bit more time. It's not going to happen quickly. And I can tell that based on what's going on the hourly MACD. All right, let's look at IWM. This is the biggest concern I've got about the market right now, and that is small caps, which we're consolidating here. And actually, at this point, we're showing a decent little uptrend on a relative basis to the S&P. Broke that to the downside. Okay, the price has been underperforming, and you can really see it here in the form of the relative strength to the S&P. That is, I think, a pretty big negative. It's pretty rare for the market to have any kind of an extreme move to the upside. Doesn't mean we can't go up, but it would to have something significant. I don't think we can have this look and do something significant. This would have to turn and show signs of strength relative to the S&P before we can expect a whole lot. Now, there is price support underneath. I'm talking about on a relative basis. I'm not necessarily saying this is going to get killed. I don't like the failure at the 18-month. I don't like the look at the MACD as much as I do on the QQQ. But I do think there's a decent amount of price support underneath. It's just a relative problem. When the small caps are underperforming, you're typically not in as strong of an environment. So Visa, one of the questions that came through. I like this. Look at the momentum that's kicking in. We got confirmation in a MACD. When price hits a new high, MACD hits a new high. We got the pullback here. This is a break of the downtrend. We're kind of turning things around, and we have a nice relative performance here. The problem I've got with this is, can it really go and break out? I mean, is this really turning this around to the point where we're going to break out right away? And I would be of the opinion that that's not the case. I would view this as a trading play if I'm going to do it. So I don't have a problem watching this pull back and seeing if it can uphook, if it can turn up from here above these two moving averages. I would consider playing it for a trade. But as we start to approach these areas up here, I would be looking to scale out. One of the things to really key on for this stock is this trend line right here, the trend line of the relative strength. If this breaks, then I think that ensures that we're staying range bound. Okay, I don't think, and we could end up coming all the way back down to the lower end of the range if we break this trend line. So kind of keep an eye on that one. Okay, so Pfizer, the positive about Pfizer, and I want to zero in on the weekly and scroll out a little bit. I mean, we've got a significant amount of price support here, right? I mean, this is not likely to have a lot of downside, and I could see this retracing back towards these two lines. Is it the start of a trending move? I would say no. I mean, I think it's a retracement rally in a stock that's gotten oversold and hitting support, as opposed to something that's really turning around. Now, you could look at this as support area at 40, right? We've got price support here, and I want to go down to the smaller time frame and look for a reversal pattern. Well, look at what happens here. We get this little pinch play here, and the hourly clearly turns, and look at the kickoff move with the big green bar. So we get the combination of these two things taking place where MACD is kind of holding up, and this is cupping around at the 18, and we can get a trading play to the upside. Yeah, maybe this wants to carry a little bit more to get to the 18 week, but don't get too excited about this as a reversal. Okay, CME, the biggest problem I've got with this is a lot of resistance. So we've already made a decent little run here. This has already gone from what, 178 all the way up to 195. It's pretty overbought. Look at all those days up in a row. And now we're coming into, we're getting a lot closer to the 18-month line, which is declining. So I think that area up there closer to 200 is going to be a problem. I don't expect this to turn into a monster mover and break out or anything like that. The good news about this on a relative basis is the improvement that we're seeing. This is pretty decent. We're breaking this downtrend. We're getting this moving average start to cup around. So, I mean, those are improving signs. And what that tells me is that this support area underneath at 170, 175 is pretty strong. I don't think this is going to fail at the 18-month and fall apart. But is it going to really get through that level right away? I don't think so. I think it's going to need more time. Edwards Lifesciences, so kind of a violent decline. We had a strong move to the downside, rally back into the resistance zone, follow through to the downside, and then now we're getting a little bit more of a complex correction, and we're going to have to see how this reacts at the zero line. Right now, we're rallying up on this time frame, getting back closer to the 18 on this time frame. The MACD has broken, and we're getting kind of a pinch play developing, and we have no real strength in the rally on the weekly. So the weekly chart is kind of doing this opposing trend pattern where it's rallying up in counter to this pattern, to the higher time frame. So this is more, I think there's support down here. I don't think this is going to fall apart. The problem I've got with this is the upside. I think it's going to hit its head on the 18-month and the 40-month and really struggle. So don't get overly excited about this. Again, it's more like trading plays, and that's what I'm seeing a lot of. The potential for trades to the upside are still there. Now, the way we're pulling back, if we pull back too hard, then we might not even get a trading play to the upside. Okay, let's look at NEE because we've had some really dynamic price action the last couple days in the utilities. Now, look at what this has done. Look at this area. You see how we've tested this area? We found support here, found support here, found there. Now we know 70 is such a critical level for this. So I actually like thinking, especially in utilities, I like to look at this more like a overbought, oversold type of thing rather than a trending sort of stock, and look for areas of major support because the risk reward is really good. If you buy it closer to 70 and it clearly breaks 70, I mean, you could cut it, but you're getting a dividend. You've got a stock that could work its way back up towards 90. I think that's what this wants to do right now is maybe work its way back up. Now, the first order of business is getting back above the 18-month line, which is right around $80. So something to watch. If you're in this, I would be on the lookout. I think this wants to work its way back up, and you can see how this is kind of traded in a channel that way. Okay, let's look at Goldman. I don't like this drop, this last drop here. It was too violent. It had too much, it was too much of an extreme. It's the same thing that I've been saying over and over again. If we look at the bigger picture, it's hard to really look for this to fall apart. Could we come back and test a little bit better, come down closer to 300? I think we can. I think we will, actually. I think that's a pretty high probability. Look at what the relative strength's doing here. So this is the total opposite. We're losing strength on a relative basis in the financials. So don't be in a big hurry to buy this. Again, if you want to trade it, I'd probably look to trade it if it got a little bit closer down to 300, and then you could maybe get a better bounce up towards 340, 350, something like that. I'm not a fan of what's going on in the banks. This is one of the bigger banks and isn't even showing the extreme movement that we're seeing in some of the bigger regional guys like PNC. Those kind of stocks you got to be really careful with. They're broken, and outside of a minor rally that might take place, I think is going to be very tough sledding. This one broke this support. If this can't get above 30 here over the next week or two, then you have to sort of assume that it's fallen through the ice, right? I mean, we broke through this key support level, and now we're kind of underneath that, and every time it bounces up there, it's going to hit its head on it. Look at the momentum starting to increase on this and the volume pattern. The biggest negative with the banks is that we had this violent move to the downside. We got really extended to the downside, oversold, hit some support, and the rally was really muted. Really muted. That's not what we want to see. I think this is going to take some time. Now we're trying to maybe this is going to mount a little bit of a rally and get into the low 30s. If it can get back above 30, then we could give this a little bit more credit in the near term. But anything below 30, I think, is really dangerous. Now look at Gilead. Now, sometimes you have to, I know we're focused on trying to make money in the here and the now, right? We want to make money here. We want to make money. This is the time frames I see a lot of people focusing their efforts on, and then they're kind of just taking a quick look at this and they don't really look at this, right? I mean, you want to be focusing on what is really taking place here. This looks to me like something significant going on a bigger picture pattern. Now, does that mean we buy it the second it starts to look good on this time frame? No, we want the lower time frames to help us with the timing. And what I would tell you here is that we've got a declining 18-week now. So what I'd like to see happen is we're pushing through this 18-week. Look for some kind of move like that where the 18 cups around, or if it starts to fail here and comes underneath, then we'd look for this kind of a pattern. But one of the two, we're looking for the first pullback, an orderly pullback, and in most cases the MACD will have some kind of a cup around pattern. It'll either do a little flyby pattern above the zero line, or it'll come down and touch and go. So we're on the lookout for that. Just be patient. I think there's something significant going on the bigger picture, but we need a little bit more time to let this walk it out and spend some time consolidating. But I do believe something important is in development in this, and until I'm proven otherwise, I'm going to believe that's happening. Okay, Reliance Industries from India. So this was a leftover. I didn't get a chance to do the prior week. So this broke the 18-month. It's come down to the 40. It's probably going to try and bounce here, but I just don't like the overall pattern. You can really see it pretty clearly how we had this zigzag going sideways and we kind of broke through that support. The relative performance died off during that phase, and now we're trying to rally back up. Now, if we fail here up around 24.75, 24.80 and turn down, I think that's a pretty big negative. The one thing that I would say is kind of positive is the fact that we did not get any real sign of strength in the selling to the downside here. So we don't have confirmation from that side yet. Okay, let's look at Roku, because this is all about understanding the difference between a setup and a trigger. Because this was sort of set up for a trade. This was rallying. This was the first test here. And if we look at what the MACD was doing, yeah, it was coming up to the zero line, but it still had a little room if you wanted to trade it for a single leg, because a lot of times the resistance is actually the zero line. So we could get this pullback to the 18 and then get a bounce. But in order to do that trade, we have to get a trigger on this time frame, right? And so what we had was, I'm not going to use this trend line here. And the reason is that the 18 is actually going in this direction at this point. That's not, to me, this isn't, it's too steep of a trend line. But if we look at what's taking place now, I can do a trend line more like this. Let's redo that. Sideways trend line. Now, you could say that we got through there, but to me, this has been more of a sideways pattern, hasn't really confirmed, and it was up there for a brief moment, and by the end of the day, kind of gave it back. When I see something like that, by the way, if you break this type of trend line, and by the end of the day, you end up as a doji pattern, I'm probably raising my stop to right underneath here, because I know this is looking like a failed breakout pattern. So if you get caught in something like this, taking this trade, I think you have to watch the bar that's actually the breakout bar. And if we don't get the type of follow through that you're looking for, I think you have to make some adjustments. And then we look for another entry. I mean, does this hold this 60 area and turn back up and then come back up through these highs? That's a possibility. But we have a low ADX condition. We're still hovering above the zero line. I mean, the potential is there. I don't like the way these stocks have pulled back. These last couple bars are kind of violent, too violent for my liking. So I want to see a little bit more proof that these are getting ready to turn the corner. We've run out of time. Thanks for joining me. Have a good long weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, Grayson Rose here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're gonna bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.